My name is David Maziba. I work here as the collections and the exhibitions coordinator. My job entails the upgrade and maintenance of the permanent exhibitions, which includes all the AVs, all the panels, the reading panels. And I also make sure that our archives are actually taken care of. Our collection, that side, is taken care of, including the objects and paper-based material. The Fort Prison came as a result of Johannesburg being discovered as a mining village after gold was found here in a farm called Langlaagte in 1886 by an Australian prospector by the name George Harrison. That's when most people started flocking into Johannesburg area. So some few years later, President Paul Kruger saw a need for a prison just to maintain law and order in the growing mining village of Johannesburg. So the fort was built as a result in 1893 and purposely placed on top of the hill just to supervise everything that was taking place in the mines. 3 years later, it was turned into a military fort because President Paul Kruger believed that the 8 landers were actually coming for his regime. 8 landers, he meant like foreigners, mostly the British people. When the war started, the South African War, which was commonly known as the Anglo Boer War, it started in 1899. A year later, during that war in the 1900s, President Paul Kruger decided to give up the fort to the British. And then the British took occupation of the fort, and they also incarcerated some of the Boer soldiers in their own prison. The war was over in 1902 when the Peace Treaty of Vereeniging was signed at Melrose House in Pretoria, ending the war. That's when this whole place was reverted to function as a prison again, up until it was closed in 1983. And all the inmates that were here were transferred to Diepkloof Prison in Soweto, which is now commonly known as Sun City. There were some black prisoners who were kept in another section of the fort because there was no prison for the non-white males. And in 1902, that's when they built, they called it the Natives Prison, which we now called number 4. It's section 4 and 5 of the prison. So it was built in 1902. That's where all the non-whites were kept. When I say non-whites, I'm referring to coloreds, Asians, Africans. They were all declared as non-whites. And racial lines were strictly kept inside the prison in a way that the guards who would guard the non-white prisoners would also be the non-white guards. Even in terms of food, they would be given different diets in terms of according to those racial lines. It has a section which is called the isolation cells. That's where mainly political prisoners were put. And they would be there under the law called detention without trial. This means you don't know why you're being detained, for how long, and the people outside don't even have knowledge of your whereabouts. So you are solely at the mercy of the prison authorities. Yeah. So some people were kept there for more than a year on a diet of rice water, starch that comes out of a boiled rice, that whitish water, just to keep them alive. And you are not being given anything. 23 hours inside there, no books, no nothing to read. Chances of going insane were very, very high. And if you had gone insane, you'd be taken on another one which has a steel bar, like a butler pro. And they would put you inside that one, keep the door open and just lock the steel bar, and then they would hose you, spray you with cold water. And if maybe the weather was like this, then the following morning, chances of survival would be very slim. The first group of women who arrived here were called Amawasha. So those are the women who actually left the homelands, because usually it would be the male who would leave the homelands coming to find employment in Johannesburg. So the women would be left with the whole burden of having to look after the kids, look after the elderly, and see if the cattle are well taken care of. So some of the women left those chores and decided to come and work in Johannesburg. So they were called amawasha. These are the women who used to do washing for the white people in their neighborhoods. So the women's prison was actually built in 1910. So President Paul Kruger saw that there were women in the city, so he also decided to extend the prison by putting up a women's section in 1910. In the women's section, both blacks and whites were kept in the same prison, but it was in separate sections. The reason why we have the court here is to say the atrocities of the past must never repeat themselves. The court is here to serve as a constant reminder to say whatever cruelty that was done to people during apartheid, it doesn't prevail at this day and age. To mark that, we have a prison block which was demolished solely for the purpose of building the constitutional court. So this basically means there was no space for building the court. So they decided to take that prison block down in order to have the court. That prison block used to be an awaiting trial for the non-white males. It is a prison where the likes of the Mandelas, the O.R. Tambos, the Chief Albert Lutulis were once kept during a treason trial in 1956. I would say that's where the high command of the MK was kept during 1956, during that treason trial. So that prison is completely taken down, but they kept the stairwells because it was a double-story building. They left 4 of these stairwells. 1 of them has been incorporated inside the constitutional court. So this means when you are inside the court, you're able to see the prison block. And its original bricks, which are the red bricks, were carefully preserved, later reused in building the court chamber. So the idea here is to say whatever that used to happen in the past must not happen now during democracy. And those bricks, when you are inside the main chamber, they serve as a constant reminder of where we used to be. And it also says to the judges, because the judges are surrounded by all of these red bricks, it also says to the judges, whatever history that we had, which was bad, it can also be turned into something good. We sort of like recycled the bricks and used them for something different. Whereas they were initially used to imprison people, but now they are being used to protect people's rights. The non-white males were made to work outside of the prison. So this means every morning, 6 o'clock, they'll do a roll call and then they'll march outside. And they came back inside the prison around about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And when they came back, there was a very humiliating kind of a dance, which was called Tauza, that they had to perform in front of the warders. The purpose of the dance was just to look through their rectums and check if they were not smuggling anything through their bodies, but it was done in a very inhumane way. Ex-prisoners said after doing that dance, you will feel as if like you're still undressed. Some of the ex-prisoners testified that the guards would normally come at night, take a prisoner out of a cell, he would be beaten to death, taken to the mortuary next door, and the post-mortem would come back saying they died out of natural causes. So the treatment here at the fort was different to the treatment in number 4 or in the women's prison. So the isolation cells here at the fort, mainly in isolation, they would put political prisoners because they were the ones who were regarded as extremely dangerous. But under normal circumstances, it would be prisoners who had committed minor crimes inside the prison. But we have learned a lot of political prisoners being in isolation. The challenges we have here, First, I would like to mention the museum itself being a heritage site. You can't put anything just to balance the structure anyhow. You have to sort of like follow protocols. We have resorted to doing things virtually in a way that we've introduced our virtual tour. So if you'd like to go on a virtual tour, you are welcome to do that. It's live and kicking. The Constitution Hill site was declared a National Heritage Site on the 10th of March in 2017. And the reason why it was declared a National Heritage Site is because it's one of the unique sites in the world where you would find a place where people's rights were violated. It's now a place where those rights are actually protected. It's unique in a way that you're not looking only in the past, but you're also advocating for the future, because the court is there as our hope for the future. And then we also have a section called the public programs, where we engage directly with the public. It can be a program on anything. So we're trying to conscientize the communities around of what is it that they have here and how can they play an active role into this heritage, because this is their heritage. We also have an ex-prisoners program where we engage with ex-prisoners, be it on tours or whether they're actually giving a speech, or someone would like to have them around, maybe just for question's sake and all of that. So we have different spaces that we hire out to people, indoors, outdoors, conference venues. We also have annual events that we run. One of them happens around June, which is Basha Uhuru. It's very big on social media. And then we also have a creative hub where we look at the well-being of the creatives and provide them with necessary material that would help them to thrive in their businesses. Yeah, that is also based down at the Transvaal, which is something we just did recently. The key figures who were once imprisoned here, that will include Mr. Mandela. He was kept here in 1962. And this was after being apprehended in KwaZulu-Natal, outside Howick, in a place called Ceded, which has now been marked as the capture site. So Mandela was the only non-white male prisoner to be kept in the white section. That was because of his status at the time. And they also feared that when he was in the non-white male section, he was going to cause maybe a revolution that side. Because people were looking up to him, they knew who he was. Albertina Sisulu was kept in the women's prison in 1958. Gandhi was also here in 1908 for refusing to carry an identity document as a non-white citizen. This is the Mandela cell. What you're seeing here, these are replicas of Mr. Mandela's documents. So we did this exhibition in collaboration with the Nelson Mandela Foundation. It's titled A Prisoner Working in the Garden. It's sort of like an irony. This is the Bill of Rights, which is chapter 2 of the Constitution. This Bill of Rights was signed by Mr. Mandela and the first Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court, Arthur Chaskalson. This was in 2003 when Mr. Mandela came to this very same cell where he was kept as a prisoner. Constitution Hill is one of the most important heritage sites in South Africa. It's a site that is not only focusing on the past, but it has the court, which is an active court that is making current decisions on our constitution today. And people can come to Constitution Hill. We are open from Monday to Sunday, and we have 2 tours per day due to COVID-19. Those tours can only be booked online. We don't accept walk-ins. People can pay cash and produce their credit cards. You have to do the online booking so that we don't exchange anything when you get on site, and that will be a guided tour. One of our experienced tourist guides will take you around on site.